Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. The prolonged debate by former Confederates about the reasons for the loss of Gettysburg spanned the lifetimes of these soldiers as they considered the campaign's place in the history of the Civil War and America's memory. Among those who shared his thoughts is the man pictured here, Colonel Walter Heron Taylor, life dates 1838 to 1916, a native of Norfolk, Virginia, an 1857 graduate of the Virginia Military Institute, who joined the staff of General Robert E. Lee soon after Lee accepted command of Confederate forces. Taylor proved steadfast, efficient, and a tireless aide to Lee throughout the war until the very end at Appomattox. In 1877, the same year, his book, 4 Years with General Lee, was published. Taylor's observations about Gettysburg appeared in a paper published by the Southern Historical Society, who you students of the Civil War know was created to document and preserve Confederate history, ultimately producing 52 volumes of materials. Taylor followed up his Southern Historical Society paper with a deeper analysis published in the Philadelphia Weekly Times. I want to share a section where Taylor describes Pickett's charge, laying the blame for the loss on Longstreet's inability to execute Lee's plan, though he adds nuance and an acknowledgement of broader contributing factors that impacted Longstreet. Considering Taylor's authoritative account of Lee's career in the Army of Northern Virginia, his close proximity to Lee through the war, and his loyalty to the general, people put much weight on his determinations and opinions. Taylor begins. Pickett's division of Longstreet's Corps was then up, fresh and available. Heath's division of Hill's Corps was also mentioned as available, having in great measure recuperated since its active engagement of the first day. So also were the brigades of Lane and Scales of Pender's division, Hill's Corps, and as our extreme right was comparatively safe, being well posted and not at all threatened, one of the divisions of Hood and McLaws and the greater portion of the other could be moved out of the lines and be made to take part in the attack. Indeed, it was designed originally that the two divisions last named, reinforced by Pickett, should make the attack, and it was only because of the apprehensions of General Longstreet that his corps was not strong enough for the movement that General Hill was called on to reinforce him. Orders were sent to General Hill to place Heath's division and two brigades of Pender's at General Longstreet's disposal and to be prepared to give him further assistance if requested. The assault was to have been made with a column of not less than two divisions, and the remaining divisions were to have been moved forward in support of those in advance. This was the result of the conference alluded to earlier outside of this reading and understood by me. Lieutenant General A.P. Hill appears to have had the same impression, for he says in his report of the operations of the Corps at this time, I was directed to hold my line with Anderson's division and half of Pender's, now commanded by General Lane, and to order Heath's division, commanded by Pettigrew, and Lane's and Scales's brigade of Pender's division to report to Lieutenant General Longstreet as a support to his corps in the assault on the enemy's lines. General Longstreet proceeded at once to make the dispositions for attack, and General Lee rode along the portion of the line held by A.P. Hill's corps and finally took position about the Confederate center on an elevated point from which he could survey the field and watch the result of the movement. After a heavy artillery fire along the entire line and at a given signal, the movement began, but the plan agreed on was not carried out. The only troops that participated in the attack were the divisions of Pickett, 1st Corps, and Heath, 3rd Corps. The latter, since the wounding of General Heath, commanded by General Pettigrew, and the brigades of Lane, Scales, and Wilcox. The two divisions were formed in advance, the three brigades as their supports. The divisions of Hood and McLaws from the First Corps were passive spectators of the movement. To one who observed the charge, it appeared that Pettigrew's line was not a continuation of that of Pickett, but that it advanced in echelon. It would seem that there was some confusion in forming the troops, for Captain Lewis G. Young of General Pettigrew's staff says, on the morning of the 3rd of July, General Pettigrew, commanding Heath's division, was instructed to report to General Longstreet, who directed him to form in the rear of Pickett's division and support his advance upon Cemetery Hill, which would be commenced as soon as the fire from our artillery should have driven the enemy from his guns and prepared the way for attack. And I presume that it was in consequence of this having been the first plan settled on that the erroneous report was circulated that Heath's division was assigned the duty of supporting that of Pickett. But the order referred to was countermanded almost as soon as given, and General Pettigrew was instructed to advance upon the same line with Pickett, a position of Pender's division acting as supports. Wilcox's brigade was ordered to support Pickett's right flank, and the brigades of Lane and Scales acted as supports to Heath's division. General Lane says in his report, General Longstreet ordered me to form in rear of the right of Heath's division, commanded by General Pettigrew. Soon after I had executed this order, putting Lawrence on the right, I was relieved of the command of the division by Major General Trimble, who acted under the same orders that I had received. Heath's division was much longer than Lawrence's brigade and my own, which constituted its only supports, and there was consequently no second line in rear of his left. The assaulting column really consisted of Pickett's division, two brigades in front and one in the second line as a support, with the brigade of Wilcox in the rear of its right to protect that flank, while Heath's division moved forward on Pickett's left in echelon, or with the alignment so imperfect and so drooping on the left as to appear in echelon, with Lane's and Scales's brigades in rear of its right and its left without reserve or support and entirely exposed. Thus, the whole column moved forward. It is needless to say a word here of the heroic conduct of Pickett's division. That charge has already passed into history as one of the world's great deeds of arms. While doubtless many brave men of other commands reached the crest of the height, this was the only organized body that entered the works of the enemy. Much can be said in excuse for the failure of the other commands to fulfill the task assigned them. As a general rule, the peculiarly rough and wooded character of the country in which our army was accustomed to operate, and which, in some respects, was unfavorable for the maneuvers of large armies, was of decided advantage to us. For, in moving upon the enemy through bodies of woods or in broken rolling country, not only was the enemy at a loss how to estimate our strength, but our men were not impressed with that sense of insecurity which must have resulted from a thorough knowledge of their own weakness. It was different here. The charge was made down a gentle slope and then up to the enemy's lines, a distance of over half a mile, denuded of forests and in full sight of the enemy and perfect range of their artillery. These combined causes produced their natural effect upon Pettigrew's division and the brigades supporting it, caused them to falter and finally retire. Then Pickett's division, continuing the charge without supports and in sight of the enemy, was not half so formidable or effective as it would have been had trees or hills prevented the enemy from so correctly estimating the strength of the attacking column and our own troops from experiencing that sense of weakness which the known absence of support necessarily produced. In spite of all this, it steadily and gallantly advanced to its allotted task. As the three brigades under Garnett, Armistead, and Kemper approached the enemy's lines, a most terrific fire of artillery and small arms is concentrated upon them, but they swerve not. There is no faltering. Steadily moving forward, they rapidly reduce the intervening space and close with their adversaries. Leaping the breastworks, they drive back the enemy and plant their standards on the captured guns amid shouts of victory, dearly won and short lived victory. No more could be exacted or expected of those men of brave hearts and nerves of steel. But where are the supports to reap the benefit of their heroic efforts and gather the fruits of a victory so nobly won? Was that but a forlorn hope on whose success, not only in penetrating the enemy's lines, but in maintaining its hold against their combined and united efforts to dislodge it? An entire army was to wait in quiet observation? Was it designed to throw those few brigades, originally at most but two divisions, upon the fortified stronghold of the enemy, while full half a mile away, 7/9 of the army, in breathless suspense, in ardent admiration, and fearful anxiety, watched, but moved not? I maintain that such was not the design of the commanding general. Had the veteran divisions of Hood and McLaws had moved forward as was planned in support of those of Pickett and Pettigrew, not only would the latter division in all probability have gained the enemy's works, as did that of Pickett, but these two would have been enabled, with the aid of Hood and McLaws, to resist all efforts of the enemy to dislodge them. The enemy, closing in on Pickett's brigades, concentrating upon the small band of heroes, the fire of every gun that could be brought to bear upon them, soon disintegrated and overpowered them. Such as were not killed, disabled, and made captive fell back to our lines. It appears that General Longstreet deemed it necessary to defend his right flank and rear with the divisions of McLaws and Hood. These divisions, as before stated, constituted all of the Confederate line held by Longstreet's troops, and it is not apparent how they were necessary to defend his flank and rear. The nearest infantry force of the enemy to our right occupied the hills, Round Top and Big Round Top, and the only force that could be said to have threatened our flank and rear consisted of two brigades of cavalry so posted as to protect the enemy's left. It is not my purpose here to undertake to establish the wisdom of an attack on the enemy's position on the third day, which General Longstreet contends was opposed by his judgment, and of which he says he would have stayed the execution had he felt that he had the privilege to do so. Nor do I propose to discuss the necessities of his position, which he represents to have been such as to forbid the employment of McLaws and Hood's divisions in the attack. Neither do I seek any other than a just explanation of the causes of our failure at that time, but well recalling my surprise and disappointment when it was ascertained that only Pickett's division and the troops from Hill's corps had taken part in the movement, and with positively distinct impressions as to the occurrences just related, I deem it proper to record them for confirmation or refutation, as the undisputed facts of the case and the testimony of others may determine. After the assault on the enemy's works on the 3rd of July, there was no serious fighting at Gettysburg. The 4th passed in comparative quiet. Neither army evinced any disposition to assail the other, notwithstanding the brilliant achievements of Ewell and Hill on the first day, and the decided advantage gained by Longstreet on the second. The failure of the operations of the third day, involving, as they did, but two divisions of the army, deprived us of the prestige of our previous successes and gave a shadow of our right to our adversary's claim of having gained a victory. Their exultation, however, should be tempered with moderation when we consider that after one day of absolute quiet, the Confederates withdrew from their front without serious molestation and, with bridges swept away and an impassable river in rear, stood in attitude of defiance until their line of retreat could be rendered practicable, after which they safely recrossed into Virginia. So there you have Colonel Taylor's analysis of events. And as you can see, he goes into quite a bit of detail, but it's worth processing because, by his account, Pickett is more or less, or at least my read of it is, Pickett is more or less isolated. Longstreet keeping away the rest of his troops from helping Pickett coming to his aid creates an impression, leaves an impression that Pickett was pretty much at it all on his own, and Longstreet wasn't really able to support him in the way that he needed to be supported, while the rest of Lee's army just pretty much stood by and watched, not being called into action. Anyway, appreciate you listening. Take care. We'll see you until the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.